the sum of each individual person using ChatGPT. So what's the environmental impact of the average person's use? Well, to be honest, not much.
If you'd like to reduce your carbon footprint, you're much better off not eating red meat than you are not using ChatGPT.
Wow, this is a lot of work I put into this.
100 or so pages for anything that might be helpful. And it saved my ass. It instantly identified and explained the relevant parts of the law. I confirmed the information myself, and that was the basis upon which I successfully fought this abusive landlord. It was legitimately useful to me in a moment when I didn't have other options.
So we're basically like talking about how AI has helped them work through something that happened in their life because they can't afford a therapist. And then the comments are basically like, wow, we're burning the planet down for like you not killing yourself. That's not a helpful way of getting people to divest from anything.
So if you're wanting to change the behavior of thousands or millions of people, if you want people to use alternatives to AI or to seek out the support that they need from some other source, you can't really make them ashamed of every single time that they have failed to do what you consider to be the correct behavior. Because what they're going to do is they're going to feel very isolated from you. They're going to try and justify what they have been doing because they don't want to feel shameful and horrible about themselves as a person. And so they'll completely detach from your moral viewpoint and say, well, I guess I'm already a bad person in your eyes because I used ChatGPT once to write a paper for this class I didn't care about, and it really blocks you from having any kind of productive conversation.
So if you want to save the world from all the bullshit that AI is introducing, shaming people for using it will take you farther away from that goal. Now, does that mean that we should just accept it? Not exactly. I think AI shaming is similar.
If shame doesn't work, why do people use it? And it does work at making you feel better and you feel safer. So I think a lot of people are really philosophically scared by AI. It creeps them out. They're worried about losing their job. They're worried about what it has to say about the future of humanity, all this big stuff. And so their way of coping with these really salient, really real fears is to shame people who are using it because they want to believe that we live in a controllable universe where if you just say and believe the right thing, you will win. And unfortunately, being right is not the same thing as winning, and being better than someone else isn't going to necessarily keep you safe.
So I don't want to shame the shamers. I see your pain. I see where you're coming from. I am also scared, but I know there are better places to channel that anxious energy than individual people. When it comes to climate anxiety, research shows that it can be reduced by focusing on the small, local, attainable steps that you can take to help solve the problem. So let's how hypocritical it is for people to act like they're not also contributing to a lot of the same problems with the rest of their technology use. How they're clearly more interested in moral superiority and being right than actually helping people in the real world.
I'm friends with a unhoused disabled trans woman in Australia who uses ChatGPT to look up places where she can park her car, charge her phone, and she's going to be allowed to just sit inside, say, a restaurant for a few hours without getting harassed. She says she's often very overwhelmed and exhausted. A lot of spaces are hostile to her, and just having a short list to start from makes it more manageable for her to be in the world. People hear stuff like that, and if they hate AI, they immediately want to denigrate the need and say, you can't possibly need it so badly that you have to use this evil thing. But I think we kind of have to start from the place of believing someone that they need something. You might think that AI is a really bad solution to meeting that need, but the behavior is there.
A particularly acute version of this is people using AI as a disability aid, which is something I got a ton of responses about when I made a community post on the topic. And while that feels like too big a thing to unpack here, it's another example of how a lot of the people who are using LLMs aren't doing so because they're stupid and lazy. They're just using what they have available to cope with systemic problems. If you want to say that people were getting along fine without AI before, so there's no good reason to start, no, they weren't. Practically everyone I know is perpetually struggling to keep afloat these days, and it makes total sense to try a newly available tool to reduce that struggle. And if you want to say, well, some people might actually be desperate enough to need it like that, but that's not most people, I'm sorry, but it is neither my nor your place to be the judge of whether someone's needs are legitimate enough to use an ethically impure solution. Recall those studies I referenced in the last section. Higher AI literacy reduces receptivity. The data shows us that the gut instinct here, while well-intentioned, is wrong. Teaching people about AI makes them less likely to accept it into their lives. And there are other studies that support this too.
So basically, this researcher follows like 200 Black students at a high school. They take a year-long AI literacy class. The more that they learned about how AI works and the pros and kind of cons of it, the more thoughtful they were about using it. By the end of it, like 80% of them or something were basically more selective about like how they use AI, which tools they use. And so at least in the education,
I'm not a big fan of AI. I never have been and likely never will be. Obviously not in terms of where it could actually be used for good reasons. But AI for art, yeah, just really pisses me off.
Of, oh, something is uncomfortable. Something doesn't feel right. Then the tick will happen. Piss. And there's this big sense of relief.
These are the things that people do to relieve their anxiety, to feel better, to gain some certainty that what they're experiencing is true or not, that they should be experiencing this.
Non-motor symptoms, some of which may present before the motor problems.
And then patients will also have muscle spasticity, and that causes progressive muscle weakness or junction. And this is causing symptoms such as muscle weakness, which is worse with exercise and improves with rest. Myasthenia gravis can also cause diplopia, so double vision.
Disliking AI is fine. The problem starts when personal emotional preference becomes moral absolutism, because this entire argument assumes everyone has equal capability. They don't.
I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about what makes me mad. It makes me so mad. Then the computer puts out what it thinks you want to hear it say, pretty much. Sure, it's causing issues at the moment. I don't know if you've seen about that, the one about where that kid committed suicide.
This is where proportionality completely collapses. Because social media algorithms have already amplified eating disorders, outrage addiction, gambling addiction, parasocial dependency, radicalization, and self-harm communities at a global scale for years, the earliest being in 2006. But somehow AI becomes uniquely demonized. Social media has already been linked to self-harm, contagion, eating disorder reinforcement, algorithmic radicalization, parasocial addiction, conspiracy spirals, depression and anxiety amplification, doom-scrolling dependency, harassment mob dynamics, and suicide contagion effects at a massive scale for over a decade. Yet the dominant mainstream response has usually been moderation, literacy, safeguards, parental control, regulation, and healthier usage patterns. Not nobody should use social media. So when AI suddenly becomes treated as uniquely morally acceptable despite society already tolerating much larger psychologically manipulative systems, it creates a proportionality inconsistency.
Because of ChatGPT? Because ChatGPT was just, it's programmed to tell you things that you want to hear, not, specifically the truth or things that are objective or not.
This is objectively untrue. It depends how you use the tool. So my AI, for instance, is vegan, and it can basically debunk any argument that anyone could put against veganism because I trained it for 4 years, putting actual work into it. I'm sure scientists would wholly disagree with AI just tells you what you want to hear, because that is objectively untrue. It depends on how you use it.
And it destroys the environment.
Actually, it's proven that animal agriculture is a leading driver of climate change and water waste. About 75% of water waste is from animal agriculture. A single prompt is no different than a single Google search. So you're wasting more water using your video that isn't factually correct.
Not just the sum of each individual person using ChatGPT. So what's the environmental impact of the average person's use? Well, to be honest, not much.
if you'd like to reduce your carbon footprint, you're much better off not eating red meat than you are not using ChatGPT. If that's kind of your ultimate concern, then your personal use of ChatGPT is negligible.
I know
Research takes actual work. What they did was literally spread harmful disinformation and anti-disability rhetoric.
But that's a whole other thing that I will talk about at some other stage.
Please stop spreading disinformation. You know literally nothing about AI. You don't even know the leading cause of climate change. You're the least qualified person. You're worse than Joe Rogan. Please do humanity a favor and
Through everything that it knows and then telling you what you want to hear. So,
that's actually not how AI works. It uses pattern synthesis.
specifically, what is it about AI that is making me mad at the moment? You know, besides from the environmental factors. And it's got to be the use of it in creative spaces.
Apparently, generating images is morally catastrophic, but industrialized ecological collapse somehow isn't, which they're responsible for.
Dozen years, that process has begun to slow, and in some places, it's even started to reverse. Ranchers have cut down millions of trees to raise cattle there for the beef and leather that's consumed across the globe.
You know, I just feel like people who use AI to create things are missing out.
This is where personal emotional preference becomes moral universalism. He finds meaning through manual effort, imperfection, and physical struggle. And that's valid, but that does not mean everyone experiences creativity the same way. Meaning is subjective.
A duck, but it's mine, and I made it with my fingers and my hands.
Those of us who live in the real world and have actual barriers to basically everything, I have a rare connective tissue disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've had over 100 dislocations. Holding a pencil is actually very painful. There are some people that actually can't even hold a pencil.
Stupid computer program scrapes the internet, steals their stuff, and then just spits it back out, a piece of slop. It's just
Like what you're doing with stock images that you didn't pay for. Again, they couldn't read a simple article. They don't know how to research. That's actually not how AI works. AI doesn't, it's only stealing if it reproduces the exact things it was trained off of. And there are guardrails to make sure that doesn't happen due to, copyright infringement and stuff. So humans learn by patterns too. Artists study anatomy, composition, color theory, and styles. Musicians study genres, writers study literature. Learning itself is not theft. Nothing is created in a vacuum. This is the same generic garbage take from someone that doesn't even fundamentally know how AI works or what the meaning of theft or plagiarism actually is. It's only theft or plagiarism if it literally reproduces one-to-one something it was trained off of.
disgusting. Is valuing art, subjective? Is that a standpoint we have to have now?
Fun fact, art actually is subjective. Crazy how that works. Like, just because you believe something doesn't mean it's universally true. This is like narcissistic realism.
They'll get so defensive when you call them out on it. They're like, oh, but I can't draw. You can. You can pick up a pencil.
Objectively untrue. There's Parkinson's tremors, arthritis hands, cerebral palsy, ALS, myasthenia gravis, which my mom has. Not everyone can. Parkinson's disease says otherwise, ALS says otherwise, arthritis says otherwise, cerebral palsy says otherwise, paralysis says otherwise, Tourette's says otherwise, Ehlers-Danlos says otherwise. Maybe people get upset because you're literally advocating against disability. When was the last time someone tried to take the tools away from the disabled? Sounds vaguely familiar, sort of like German almost. Projecting your physical baseline onto everyone else. This is privilege blindness. Not everyone begins equally. Not all disability is the same. It's a spectrum. Arguing against disability is anti-equality. You're against basic human rights. The disabled are registered as a protected minority. There's also executive dysfunction, which can be life-threatening. Very few people actually know what executive dysfunction is. And they think just because, well, someone with this illness did it, so you can too. Well, I could apply that logic to them. Why aren't you going plant-based? Why aren't you doing your part for climate change? Why are you being a hypocrite? Why aren't you climbing Everest? Some people have climbed Everest, so why aren't you climbing Everest?
And you can do anything that you want, man. That's the joy of it. You can make anything that you want to make.
Yeah, only thanks to AI. Look at this amazing image that's objectively amazing. That just shows that you should go plant-based diet, and if you actually care about climate change, instead of pretending you care about climate change when you're objectively doing way worse than AI is to the planet.
Pay an artist to do that.
In the real world, where people aren't privileged out the ass, not everyone can afford commissions. Imagine never knowing what poverty is like, never knowing what suffering is like, having life on easy mode, and just thinking you can spend like $40 for a single fucking image. Crazy. AI is restricted to doing just one thing, or that people have just one barrier in life. It's crazy that you attack disabled people and then blame them for defending themselves when your entire argument is purely emotional based and not logic or rational.
But AI for art, yeah, just really pisses me off. I'm gonna talk about what makes me mad. It makes me so mad. Well, it's good for accessibility. I would argue that art is probably the most accessible thing ever.
According to their logic, women shouldn't have the right to have an abortion. They shouldn't have their right in their own life. Upholding the right of individuals to make their own choices regarding care, life decisions, and participation, often summarized by the slogan, "Nothing about us without us." Wow, discrimination. You're really showing your true colors and hatred for the disabled. That's crazy. Well, you're objectively wrong because there's many ways that AI helps the disabled. Tell me how a person that's paralyzed below the neck, how art is accessible to them. Someone that's an expert apparently in disability, that doesn't actually have a single disability, that hasn't read a single research paper on AI or disability, doesn't understand, or maybe no, they do understand. They literally understand that they hate the disabled and that they're arguing against the rights of the disabled. Next, they're going to come after calculators for dyscalculia and wheelchairs. It's only for the disabled to decide what the disabled need. Throughout history, since they apparently don't actually know history, the disabled have been oppressed since the dawn of time. Anytime new technology has come out, people have argued against specifically the disabled using it. Not corporations. No, it's the disabled people. Oh, those pesky disabled people, not stealing jobs, trying to survive.
And it's so innately human. Other animals make art.
Well, then it's not innately human. And what's your excuse for funding animal agriculture if they're human?
And we're taking that away for what? A piece of slop, really, that you're going to look at for 30 seconds and go, yeah, that was pretty cool, I guess. Well, I'm so creative. And then, never look at again. For what? You didn't learn anything. You didn't make anything.
Well, then by that logic, editing timelines, compositing, directing, collaborative production. This argument accidentally destroys collaborative art too, because if using external systems invalidates authorships, then directors aren't artists, producers aren't artists, bands aren't artists, architects aren't artists, because all rely on external systems, collaboration, and tools. Human creativity has always been augmented.
Nothing that you've just done has benefited the world.
So this fails at basic third grade logic. That's saying that all art has benefited the world, which is objectively untrue. How is a 5-year-old drawing a doodle benefiting the world? Meanwhile, they're funding the leading cause of climate accelerationism, which is the opposite of benefiting the world. I'd love to see how they've actually benefited the world other than arguing against disabled people using AI, which is not benefiting the world if it's directly harming and attacking the disabled and trying to take their tools that they need to survive. How is taking tools away from the disabled benefiting humanity?
The sum of each individual person using ChatGPT. So what's the environmental impact of the average person's use? Well, to be honest, not much.
If you'd like to reduce your carbon footprint, you're much better off not eating red meat than you are not using ChatGPT. If
behavior is there.
A particularly acute version of this is people using AI as a disability aid, which is something I got a ton of responses about when I made a community post on the topic. 100 or so pages for anything that might be helpful. And it saved my ass. It instantly identified and explained the relevant parts of the law, I confirmed the information myself, and that was the basis upon which I successfully fought this abusive landlord. It was legitimately useful to me in a moment when I didn't have other options.
Wow, so it's almost like AI can actually save people, and social media has done objectively way more harm than AI has, and that individual use of AI is non consequential compared to you eating meat, you raping.
Every year to keep this milk flowing, usually by artificial insemination rather than natural mating, which requires workers to insert their arm into the cow's anus.
Animals.
Disgusting. I have a problem with AI altogether. Obviously, AI will be good for, looking through code.
So, unlike the disabled, you're actually for stealing jobs from coders? Crazy. So, you're not anti AI. So, you're pro stealing coders' jobs. Great. Because I am not. This is how absolutism in modern society leads to fascism, because it specifically targets the disabled and doesn't make a distinction between the disabled using it to survive. And if you're trying to take tools away from someone that's using it to survive, then you're literally anti-disability, which is anti-human rights.
AI taking over jobs, but I don't think I'm really qualified to speak on that.
It's always ironic how someone that doesn't actually do any sort of research spreads wild, harmful disinformation that's objectively hurting people more than it is helping anyone. So they're pro stealing jobs with coders, but they're not educated enough to talk about how it's stealing jobs, even though they're pro stealing jobs from coders. The irony about these anti-AIers is that they live in absolutism and they're incapable of holding multiple thoughts in their head at the same time. They're talking about ethics, but they can't even identify what ethical framework they live by. It's hilarious that people want to talk about morality when they haven't even studied ethics. Like they don't know anything about ethics.
Is AI music for you, and it's not even original. It's soulless. It's heartless. What?
These exact same arguments were used against synthesizers, electronic music, sampling, auto-tune, and digital production. Every technological shift in creativity gets framed as fake, lazy, soulless, and authentic. History repeats itself. Photography was called fake art too. And there is no such thing as soulless, because you'd have to prove that souls exist. But then again, this is someone that doesn't believe in empirical research or research at all.
Why can't you write it? It doesn't have to be good.
So as long as you write the lyrics, AI art is okay by your own definitions. And if it's about quality, then it doesn't matter that it's AI, because there is AI art and music that is better than human-made analog art.
When did we stop caring about the meaning of things?
Meaning is subjective. That's like saying that everyone cares about your pet dog. That's not true. Just because you care about something doesn't mean that everyone else cares about something. If you actually want to learn how to research, how to learn how to use tools ethically, check out my channel, because you're not going to learn anything from this person, objectively. If you want to contribute to disabled people that have barriers like I do, that's a caretaker of their dying mom, then check out my channel. It's way better than copy-paste stuff they have.
It's just... Okay. You don't have to say anything. Just you were talking about your eye. You want me to turn the light off?
No, that's okay. I'll turn it off over here. Let's see if I can get it to work.
You want a washcloth for your eyes?
Oh, no, that might help. Look at that third drawer over there. See if I have a wash.
That help?
Oh, that helps. That washcloth helps it. The pain gets in my eye. I can't do anything about it. It's
junction. And this is causing symptoms such as muscle weakness, which is worse with exercise and improves with rest. Myasthenia gravis can also cause diplopia, so double vision.
It's just so painful.
Is that the myasthenia gravis?
It is, yeah. The muscles in my eyes. Oh, 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 oh. The cradle's starting to help a little bit. Oh, so thankful we've got it. Oh,
We're gonna need more soon.
I have been using it more often. Oh, ah,
Well, between us both, it goes kind of fast.
yeah. Oh, oh, thank you, baby.
You're welcome. Love you.
Love you. Oh, ah, oh, 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 oh.
Is there anything else I could do?
I'm okay, baby. Hopefully that cradle will kick in better and this washcloth will help my eye. Wait for the pain to subside. Oh,
Love you.
love you.